Today I'm going to take you on a tour of a Lebanese breakfast joint. We're going to be making 4 classic dishes that showcase fava beans, chickpeas and preserved meat. You can get these vegan and non-vegan dishes all over Lebanon, and they form part of a complete breakfast spread. If you're new here, I'm Obi, and I'll be showing you quick and easy recipes for Ful Medames, Msabaha, Fattet Hummus and Kawarma. Now, let's get started. So when I say Lebanese breakfast joint, I'm referring to a place like this. This awesome video by Rahayel shows a master at work, putting together these exact same dishes. There are small restaurants like this all over the Middle East, and they'll commonly serve the national versions of fava bean and chickpea dishes. Alright, let's begin with the Msabaha, which you can kind of think of as smashed chickpeas. It's a very simple dish that can be whipped up in a short time, and that's all thanks to canned chickpeas. You can also use dried chickpeas for this, and I'll leave a link in the description for how to prepare these. Now, because I'm going to be making a bunch of chickpea dishes, I'm using an 800 gram can, but for this recipe you'll want to use a 400 gram or 14 ounce can. Open up the can of chickpeas and pour them into a strainer, giving them a quick wash to remove the gloopy liquid. Now check the texture of your chickpeas by crushing one in your hand. You want it to have a soft and easily mushed inside, but I find that most canned chickpeas are a little bit too hard. To fix that and to heat the chickpeas, place them in a pot and we'll briefly cook them. To the pot, add in 1 teaspoon of cumin and a 1/4 teaspoon of chili powder. Then pour enough boiling water into the pot to completely submerge the chickpeas. Turn the heat to high and they'll quickly come to a boil. And once they do, turn the heat to medium and let them simmer for about 10 to 20 minutes. When they are starting to look soft, you can remove them from the heat, and I find that just a few minutes of boiling really softens them up. Don't throw away the boiling liquid, as we'll use that in the dishes. Now we have to smash the chickpeas, and to do that, place them in a bowl and then use a potato masher to crush them. You don't want to apply too much force and completely mash them, so do it until nearly all the chickpeas have been broken into multiple pieces. When they look like this, add in 1.5 tablespoons of tahini paste, and I've got a video on the channel for how to make this. Next, you'll mince and add 1 clove of garlic, then follow that up with 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Next, add in a 1/4 teaspoon each of salt and cumin, then mix it all together. After distributing all of those ingredients, add in 1/2 cup of chickpea liquid and continue mixing until you end up with this saucy texture. Some countries also use yogurt in this recipe, so feel free to add some if you want it to be creamier, or you could just add more chickpea liquid. Now all that's left to do is to plate this in a nice serving bowl, and I garnished it with some finely chopped parsley. This dish makes for a nice fresh tasting breakfast, and it's totally vegan. Next up is the Lebanese Ful Medames. Now we've covered full dishes before on the channel, and they're basically cooked fava beans that are served hundreds of different ways. In that video I showed you how to cook the beans yourselves and how to make 3 great varieties. Today we'll be making the Lebanese version, which combines fava beans and chickpeas into something special. To start, I've got myself a can of cooked fava beans, which you can get at any Middle Eastern grocery store. This one is the Egyptian recipe, which means that it has added cumin, but it will still work good for this dish. Take your 400 gram can of fava beans and pour the entire thing, liquid and all, into a small pot. Heat this on medium heat for about 10 minutes until it releases loads of liquid and the whole thing comes to a good boil. When your beans are well heated and they look something like this, pour them out into a bowl. Once again, we want to lightly smash these, so use a potato masher or a fork to crush the beans. They should mostly split into a few pieces, and when they have, crush and add in 1 clove of garlic. Next, pour in 2 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice and 1 tablespoon of high quality olive oil. Now add in a 1/4 teaspoon salt, and then add in 50 grams or a few tablespoons of chickpeas. These have been very lightly crushed, but you can also add them in whole. Mix this all together until it looks like this big mess, then fill up a serving bowl with the mixed beans. Make a dip in the center of the beans, then add in a spoon or 2 of whole chickpeas. Top the whole thing with about 1/4 of a diced onion and 1/4 of a diced tomato. Garnish it with some finely chopped parsley, and then drown the whole thing in some high quality olive oil. Now I'm generally not a fan of fava beans, but this dish is so incredibly delicious. Alright, the third dish is Fattet Hummus. We've already covered this in another video, but that was the Syrian version, which is a bit heavier and more of a lunch or dinner dish. To start, we need to make some pitta croutons, so take 2 thin Lebanese pitta breads like this and slice them into bite-sized pieces. I'm using my kitchen scissors to cut them into squares about 1 inch in size. Place the cut pieces on a baking tray lined with greaseproof paper, then sprinkle on a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Next, pour on about 1 tablespoon of olive oil and then mix all the bread together. Once it has all been well coated, spread the bread out into a single layer and then place these in the oven to crisp up. I preheated my oven to 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and it took about 8 minutes for them to reach this golden colour. The bread is now nice and crispy, which makes it great with any salad, and they're just useful to have on hand. For the chickpea element, we're using about half a can or 200 grams of chickpeas, which I boiled with the same method I described before. Mash these up slightly until they're just broken, then set them aside. Now in a serving bowl, place a bed of the toasted pitta and then pour a couple tablespoons of the chickpea liquid onto it. Mix this well so that each piece of bread is slightly moistened, but you don't want there to be too much liquid or the bread will go mushy. Now place your mashed chickpeas on top of the bread, spreading them out evenly. Once you've done that, you'll pour over the tahini sauce, which is a simple mixture of 140 grams of yogurt, 1.5 tablespoons of tahini paste, a quarter teaspoon each of salt and cumin, 1 freshly crushed clove of garlic, 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice, and a quarter cup of chickpea liquid. Mix this all together until the texture resembles a creamy sauce like this, and if it's a little too thick, then add a bit more chickpea liquid. Pour over the sauce until it pretty much covers the entire dish, then go back and arrange a bit more bread on top. Final thing I did was take 2 tablespoons of ghee or butter and brown them in a pan with a tablespoon of pine nuts. Once the pine nuts were golden, I poured the butter over the dish and then I topped it with toasted pine nuts. Finally, I added a few more whole chickpeas and that was the Fattet Hummus done. The final dish is bid bil awarma, which is basically fried eggs with confit meat. This awarma is a common ingredient in Lebanese cuisine and it's a traditional method of preserving meat to extend its shelf life. This is also served over hummus and a bunch of other Lebanese dishes, so it's great to have on hand. To make it, take 300 grams of lamb and you'll slice this into small pieces. I didn't have any lamb on hand, so instead I used some beef ribeye. You want to cut this into small cubes about 1 centimeter in size so that they look something like this. We'll be confitting them in animal fat, and traditionally this is done with lamb fat for added flavour. Here I've got 300 grams of beef fat, and you need to cut this into smallish squares so that we can render it down into a liquid. Once you've cut them like this, place the fat in a pot and turn the heat to low. The fat will begin to melt and liquidize, and what you'll do is stir the pot every 10 minutes. After 30 to 40 minutes, the pot will have loads of liquid fat in it, and the cubes of fat will have crisped up and shrunken like so. Remove them from the pot and we'll now add the meat in. Stir the meat with the fat to thoroughly coat it, and then make sure your temperature is set to low. Now add in 2 bay leaves and about 10 black peppercorns, and this will cook for about 30 minutes. When the time is up, add in 1 tablespoon of salt and give it a good stir to combine with the meat. Now this first batch I massively overcooked by using a medium-low heat. Make sure your heat is really low, otherwise even your cat will refuse to eat it. This second batch is about right for how you want it to look, except I've cut this one a little bit too big. To properly store the meat, take a sterile jar and then add all of the meat to it. Push it down into the jar, then pour in the remaining rendered fat until it completely covers the meat. I was a little low, but that's not an issue since I was going to use it right away. This confit meat can actually last a few months in the fridge, and it's good to add some flavour to fried eggs. I usually make my fried eggs with a little butter, but most of the Lebanese videos seem to use oil for deep frying the egg. So in a pan I added a few spoonfuls of the awarma and I let it heat up with the oil. Then I added in 3 eggs and I fried this until fully cooked. It's also traditional to scramble this, but I think if I do this in the future, I probably won't be adding more fat than is already with the meat. I garnished it with a little Aleppo pepper, and that's all 4 of the breakfast dishes done. There's definitely something in here for everyone, and I was pleasantly surprised when trying them. Now let's check out the taste test. So before we jump into tasting, here's a quick primer on how you eat most Middle Eastern breakfast foods. So this is some Arabic flatbread. What you do is you break off a sort of squarish or cornerish piece like that, right? When you come to eat the food, you fold it kind of like this. You put your finger in the middle and you make a U shape. This in Arabic, we call it widn al-otta or cat's ear because it kind of looks like the shape of a cat's ear. And then you scoop with it to lift up the food, or if it's something that can be grabbed, you place it on top of the food and you grab it and then lift it up. So first thing we've got is the Msabaha, which I would say is kind of like a chickpea version of ful. This one has an incredibly fresh flavour. It's light, it's delicious, it's really quick to make as well. Next up we've got the ful. If you've watched my ful video, you'll know that I don't really like ful, but yeah, let's give this one a try. Now I know I just said that I don't like ful, but this one's really nice actually. I really like this. I could probably eat this. So this recipe would be perfect for somebody who likes their eggs to be really meaty or beefy, you know. Right, so we've already done a Fattet hummus before. but this one is technically a lighter Lebanese version, so yeah, let's see how it is. So yeah, this one is absolutely lighter than the other one, and that's because we don't have blended chickpeas in the sauce itself. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this one, drop me a comment down below. If you make any of these, send me some photos on Instagram. Thank you to our patrons for supporting the channel and making this video possible, and the link is in the description box if you want to join them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week with another video.